Tonight, a police officer has been arrested over alleged bets about when a general election would be held. The officer, who was part of the Prime Minister's close protection team, has been suspended. It has also emerged that a Conservative candidate is being looked into over a bet relating to the timing of the election, also on the programme. Inflation falls to its lowest rate for almost 3 years, helped by slightly lower food prices. The search continues in the Canary Islands for a British teenager, Jay Slater, who's been missing since Monday. Launching their manifesto, the Scottish National Party says winning a majority of seats in Scotland would mean independence negotiations could begin after the election.
Yes, a goal here in Cologne for Scotland gives them a precious point here at the Euros.
On BBC London, a woman who accused her therapist of raping her during a session wins her civil case against him after an 8-year fight.
Good evening. A police officer working as part of the Prime Minister's close protection team has been suspended and later arrested over alleged bets about the timing of the general election. And as we come on air tonight, we can reveal that a second Conservative candidate is being looked into by the Gambling Commission, the industry regulator, over a bet relating to when the general election would be. It isn't known when the bet was placed or for how much money. Our political editor Chris Mason broke the stories and has this report for you now.
The Prime Minister in Suffolk this morning visiting a nuclear power plant. Wherever he goes, he has close protection officers out of view nearby. I was tipped off tonight that one of them had put bets on the timing of the general election. The Metropolitan Police acknowledged I was right. They were informed by the Gambling Commission, the regulator, on Friday. The force said the matter was immediately referred to officers in the Met's Directorate of Professional Standards, who opened an investigation, and the officer was also removed from operational duties. The officer was subsequently arrested on Monday the 17th of June on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He was taken into custody and bailed pending further inquiries. The matter has also been referred to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. And that is not all. This is Laura Saunders. She is the Conservative Party candidate in Bristol North West and has worked for the Tories since 2015, including at their head office in Westminster. I was also tipped off that the Gambling Commission was looking into a bet from her about the timing of the general election. We don't know when the bet was placed or for how much. She has not commented tonight. A Conservative Party spokesman told the BBC, "We have been contacted by the Gambling Commission about a small number of individuals. As the Gambling Commission is an independent body, it wouldn't be proper to comment further until any process is concluded." Another one of those individuals was another Conservative candidate who was a parliamentary aide to the Prime Minister. Joe Pike from our team caught up with him last week.
Did you have inside information when you placed your bet on the election date?
Statement. It's an independent process with the Gambling Commission now. I won't be expanding on that statement.
Did you have any inside information when you made the bet?
A huge error of judgment. That's for sure, and I apologise.
Mr Williams acknowledged publicly himself that he had placed a bet of £100 on a July election 3 days before it was called. 4 weeks to the day on from Rishi Sunak surprising many with a summer election, its timing is still generating headlines. Chris Mason, BBC News.
And you can find a full list of candidates standing in the general election on the BBC website. Inflation has hit the Bank of England's target for the first time in almost 3 years. Prices rose at 2% in the year to May compared to 2.3% the month before. The fall was driven by a slowdown in rising prices for food, soft drinks and furniture. But petrol prices went up sharply. Rishi Sunak said bold action by the Conservatives meant the economy had turned a corner. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said the lower rate didn't mean life had got easier for many people. Here's Faisal Islam.
It's here in the supermarket where you get a real sense of the inflationary shock to the level of prices. If you want lamb, well, that'll cost you 10% more than this time last year. Yet that pales into insignificance for olive oil, up nearly 40%. But some staples are starting to come down in price. Milk, cheese and rice, for example. Officially, goods price inflation is now negative, driven by falls in energy prices. And that is what's led to the overall rate of inflation being bang on target, 2% finally. So this is the rate of inflation across the economy. After reaching double-digit levels, it's now hit 2% for the first time in nearly 3 years. But for services, from hotels and restaurants to hairdressers, it's only really going down rather slowly, the key measure for the Bank of England in deciding interest rates. And this chart shows what shoppers know, that overall prices are up 25% since the beginning of 2022. It's just that over the past year, that rate of increase has slowed to under 2%.
Got food left, or is it all gone?
And those rises have affected butcher Gary in Sussex, but he says things are finally starting to stabilise.
The actual price of the product is pretty much stationary now. Well, we hope it's stationary. It'd be nice if it would come down, but I can't see that. Not in the foreseeable future anyway.
And have you made your mind up how you're going to vote?
This is the last major economic statistic of the election campaign, and the Chancellor wants the credit with voters.
You didn't accept the blame when inflation went to double digits, and now you want the credit because it's come back to target.
It is true that inflation went up because of global factors, and global factors have also contributed to its fall. But it's also true that very difficult decisions that I took, working alongside the Bank of England, meant that it didn't become an inflationary spiral.
How do you think the campaign's going?
Of course it's tough, and we recognise the way we'll win this election, do better than people predict, at the very least, is by arguing on the substance. I think it's very important, if Labour win, that they have an effective opposition in Parliament.
This is Rachel. Hello.
And in Swindon, an Inflation Day walkabout in a supermarket for the Labour leadership team.
Unlike Conservative ministers, I'm not going to tell people that everything's fine. I know that the cost of living crisis is still acute.
It wasn't preordained that inflation would come down to 2%.
Well, it wasn't preordained that it would go into double digits either. The reason why our inflation rate peaked at a higher rate than so many other countries is that we were so badly exposed to the cost of living crisis. I do, of course, welcome the fact that it's back to target. But working people have paid a high price these last few years with higher mortgage rates and higher rents.
So inflation is now at target, but the voting public may not feel that the prices are now right. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
To the football now, and Scotland have a precious point after a draw with Switzerland, keeping their dreams alive in their Euro 2024 campaign. The team is now back on track after they lost their opening match against the hosts Germany 5-1. Our correspondent Jane Dougal is in Cologne for us tonight. Jane.
Sophie, I think if you'd said to anyone Scottish at the beginning of the day that they would have ended the day with a point, then they would have taken that. It was a pretty nervy game, but the Scotland fans saw a side of their team that's been missing for quite a while, especially in that first match. Now it seems the belief is back.
An army of pipers led the way, carrying the hopes of more than 20,000 Scotland fans who walked en masse to the stadium in Cologne.
Into the back of the net.
The ball came off a Swiss player. They didn't care.
Just the start they wanted.
Back in Glasgow, the party had started. It didn't last long, be stretchered off. Ahead last group game on Sunday.
Well, that game is against Hungary, and Scotland will need to get a win from that match if they want to get through to the knockout stages of this major tournament. And if they were to do that, then it would be for the first time ever. Now, Hungary played Germany a little earlier today. Those are the other two countries in Scotland's group. Germany won 2-0. Scotland are in third place. Now, the emotion that we saw in the stands here tonight in Cologne clearly inspired this Scotland side to deliver. And if passion could be converted into points, well, then Scotland would be safely through.
Jane, thank you. The mother of a teenager who's gone missing in Tenerife has revealed it was his first holiday away with friends. 19-year-old Jay Slater was last heard from on Monday morning. He called a friend saying he was trying to walk back through a national park after missing a bus but was lost. Well, Nick Garnett joins us now from the island. Nick.
Yeah, this is Playa de las Americas, which is where Jay Slater was staying. It's one of the busiest and most popular resorts on the island, but it's 20 miles to the north in one of the most remote areas of the island where the search is going on. And that's where police, mountain rescue workers and scores of locals have been joining in the search. It's now been over 2 days since Jay Slater disappeared. This was the 19-year-old's first holiday with friends. He spent the weekend at a music festival. But after meeting people on Sunday night, he headed to the far northwest of the island to stay with them, and he hasn't been seen since. His last known location was here, in the Rural de Tenno National Park. One of Jay's friends says she last heard from him on Monday morning. He told her he said he was going to walk back to where he was staying, a 10-hour trek to the southwest of the island. But the call was cut short when his battery ran out. Search teams and relatives have been working tirelessly to try and find any sign of Jay. Drones and search dogs are being used, but the mountainous terrain hasn't made it easy. Jay's mum says her son is a bubbly guy with hundreds of friends. They're all hoping for positive news. Nick Garnett, BBC News, Tenerife.
The Scottish National Party has launched its election manifesto with independence as a top priority. The SNP leader John Swinney said if his party won a majority of Scottish seats, it should mean negotiations over leaving the UK would start after the election. There was also a focus on investing billions more in the National Health Service. Our Scotland editor James Cook reports.
The SNP leader John Swinney promised independence would be front and centre of this manifesto, and it is.
At the very heart of our beliefs is the principle that decisions about Scotland should be made by the people who live in Scotland. Not independence for its own sake, independence for the powers to protect our National Health Service and to help people through tough times. Independence for a stronger economy and happier, healthier lives. James, lovely to see you. You well?
It's 10 years since Scotland voted against independence in a referendum. Mr Swinney says so much has changed, it's time for another one.
I think Scotland should have a referendum to become independent. I think it's the democratic approach to do so, and that's what the people of Scotland voted for in 2021.
Should or must?
Must.
If someone really doesn't want independence, but they like the look of your government or your offer at this Westminster election, should they vote for you?
Yes.
So how could this then be a mandate for independence if you're accepting that people might be voting on things other than independence?
Because what I've said to you earlier on is that this should be a mandate for the people of Scotland to decide on the question of independence as a standalone question, because I think that's the way that issue should be resolved.
North Sea oil and climate change have played a big part in this campaign. In Aberdeen, energy workers want to know, is the SNP in favour of new drilling or not?
We can't escape the journey to net zero that's got to be undertaken. And any application that comes forward for new oil and gas activity has got to meet the climate compatibility assessments that we have in place.
At the moment?
Yes, that's the way in which we will judge.
And they do meet them, quite a lot of them at the moment, so you're in favour of new drilling?
Well, what I'm saying is there has to be a climate compatibility assessment in place which is consistent with our journey to net zero.
But there is.
Well, I'm giving you an answer to your question. There will be, if a new licence is to come forward, then individual licences have got to pass that climate compatibility assessment.
The past year or so has not been a smooth ride for the SNP. It has slumped in the polls amid changes of leader and a police investigation into its finances. John Swinney hopes a renewed focus on independence will get it back on track. James Cook, BBC News, Edinburgh.
The Liberal Democrats have been focusing on the NHS on the campaign trail today, with the Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper reiterating the party's pledge to invest £9 billion in England's health and social care services if they win power.
We'll make sure that people can see a GP within 7 days, that we boost GP numbers by 8,000. We'll fix the crisis in dentistry. We'll offer free personal care to every older person and disabled adult who needs it. With our plans and our additional investment, we could transform our health and social care services.
Sinn Féin has also launched its manifesto in Belfast today, making the case for more powers to be devolved from Westminster to the Northern Irish Assembly Stormont. The party is defending 7 out of 18 Westminster seats, although Sinn Féin MPs don't take up their seats in the House of Commons as they don't recognise Britain's so-called sovereignty over Northern Ireland.
Sinn Féin is committed to delivering on the things that matter most to workers and families. That is healthcare, the cost of living, housing, education and childcare. We're focused on what is possible to achieve if we work together, making politics work.
The Workers' Party of Britain has also launched its manifesto. Policies include building 1 million council homes and scrapping nuclear weapons, which the party leader George Galloway said would give people hope and a patriotic purpose. He was the party's one MP in the last Parliament after winning the Rochdale by-election in February.
We want 1 million council houses. We want to put our own people back to work. We want to revive the whole concept of skilled work at which we once excelled. And we want to end Britain's posture of confrontation around the globe.
George Galloway. Well, tomorrow night, Fiona Bruce is hosting a Question Time Leaders special with the leaders of the 4 biggest political parties in Great Britain. The 2-hour special will be broadcast on BBC One and BBC iPlayer, and it begins at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. A hospital consultant has told the jury at the Lucy Letby retrial that he saw the nurse standing next to a baby girl who was deteriorating and that she was doing nothing to intervene. It's alleged that the baby's breathing tube had been dislodged by the nurse, who is charged with attempted murder. She denies the charge. Judith Moritz reports.
This was the moment Lucy Letby was arrested. Last year, a jury convicted her of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder another 6. But now she's back in court. She's being retried for one charge of attempted murder that the original jury couldn't decide. The prosecution's based on the word of Dr. Ravi Jayaram, who says he saw Letby standing next to a baby who was rapidly deteriorating but doing nothing to help. It's alleged the nurse had dislodged the baby's breathing tube. The doctor says he'd gone in to check on the infant because after a string of incidents, he and his colleagues had started to think the unthinkable, that Letby was murdering children. Defending, Ben Myers KC asked Dr. Jayaram why he and his colleagues hadn't just called the police if they believed the nurse was killing babies. The doctor blamed a culture in the NHS and said there was a strategy to keep them quiet. Ravi Jayaram said, "I can tell you what would have happened if we'd called the police. They'd have spoken to the medical director and the chief executive, who'd have said, just ignore them. They're a bunch of complaining paediatricians." He added that they'd been told that going to the police would have been bad for the reputation of the trust and there'd be blue and white tape everywhere. Ben Myers KC said, "You didn't call the police because you didn't see anything worthy of calling the police about." Dr. Ravi Jayaram said, "I disagree. I think there was an element of denial, an element of fear of retribution from those above. We were being advised from the start that the police would be the wrong route, and it's a matter of infinite regret I didn't handle it differently." Lucy Letby denies attempting to murder the baby girl in February 2016. Her trial will continue in the morning. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Manchester.
A 7-month-old baby girl has died after being bitten by the family's pet dog at a house in Coventry. She was treated by paramedics at the scene before being taken to hospital, where she died a short time later. Police say the dog was not classed as a dangerous breed and was removed from the home the same day and humanely destroyed. The jury in the trial of Constance Martin and Mark Gordon have been discharged after being unable to reach verdicts. The pair deny manslaughter by gross negligence of their baby Victoria, along with 4 other charges. The newborn's body was found inside a shopping bag in a shed in Brighton last March. Her parents were arrested 2 days later after a manhunt. Russia's President Putin has signed what he's calling a breakthrough defence pact with North Korea after his first visit to the isolated state in almost a quarter of a century. The agreement says that the two countries will protect each other in the event of what they call foreign aggression. Tonight, President Putin has arrived in Vietnam for talks with the country's communist leaders. Shaima Khalil reports from South Korea.
Vladimir Putin's Pyongyang trip was choreographed to a T, with some surreal made-for-TV moments, like this one of him driving Kim Jong-un on the streets of Pyongyang. Earlier, Kim Il-sung Square at the heart of the North Korean capital was buzzing with crowds and color, as the two globally isolated leaders reveled in each other's company and what Mr. Kim described as a new level of alliance.
We highly appreciate your consistent and unwavering support for Russian policy, including the Ukrainian direction. I mean our fight against the hegemonic imperialist policy imposed for decades by the United States and its satellites.
Since his war on Ukraine, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un have grown ever closer. Now they've signed a defense agreement that calls for mutual assistance in the event of aggression against either side, a move that will no doubt deepen Washington's anxieties.
I have no doubt that this powerful treaty signed between our two countries will be very constructive and will be a driving force in the creation of a new multinational world, free from domination, hegemony and unilateral authority.
High on Vladimir Putin's priority list is his need for more weapons as the war in Ukraine continues. Russia is desperate to replenish its depleting stockpile, and North Korea can provide that. According to the US and South Korea, it's already been doing so. Moscow and Pyongyang have denied any arms transfers. Kim Jong-un has his own urgent requests. His country, which has been heavily sanctioned for years, is struggling and needs money, fuel, food and other forms of aid. Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin have been pressured by the West and shunned by the world. They know there are limitations to what their pariah states can realistically offer each other. But for them, this deepening relationship means they haven't yet run out of options. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Seoul.
Large parts of the United States are experiencing record-breaking temperatures, and wildfires have been burning out of control in New Mexico, where thousands had to be moved from their homes. More than 70 million Americans are living under heat alerts. Will Grant reports from California.
Awe-inspiring but deadly. A towering wall of flames and heat bearing down on the town of Ruidoso in New Mexico has overwhelmed local fire crews and forced residents to flee. Most just thankful to leave with their lives, but shaken. Frank and Connie Lawyer, both 83, are sheltering in an evacuation centre, lucky to have made it out at all.
We could see the smoke change, and we were engulfed in smoke. That scared me to death.
I don't know whether we're going to have a home. There are several people in that area just above us that lost their home.
In California, these are now all too familiar scenes. Hillsides ablaze, thousands of hectares lost as tinder-dry brush catches alight, and firefighters struggling to bring around a dozen separate blazes under control.
It is devastating, especially when you get these wind-driven fires and you have all this unburnt fuel combined with low relative humidity. It can create massive damage.
As Californians endure another season of rampant wildfires, warnings over extreme weather are in place across the country, from heat waves in the northeast to a tropical storm in Texas, a nation experiencing the real-time effects of climate change. And this is just the start. Experts say this has been an unusually early and aggressive fire season, with several months of hot, dry weather ahead. The contrast with the scene in Texas couldn't be starker. The first tropical storm of the hurricane season in the Gulf of Mexico has caused flooding in Galveston, as well as in Mexico itself, as North America braces itself for more extreme weather to come. Will Grant, BBC News, Southern California.
Andy Murray's Wimbledon swan song could be in doubt after he was forced to retire from his second-round match at the Queen's Club Championships in London today. The 37-year-old was in obvious discomfort even before the match started and in the end managed just 5 games against the Australian Jordan Thompson before the pain became too much. With Wimbledon just a fortnight away, the two-time champion says he will have a scan tomorrow to find out the extent of the problem in his back. He has previously said that he is unlikely to play beyond the end of this summer. Tomorrow afternoon, England play Denmark in their second match at the Euros. They need just one more win to book their place in the knockout stages of the tournament. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss looks at preparations in the England camp on the eve of the match.
A Danish band playing an England anthem. Harmony among the rivals in Frankfurt as fans revelled in the main square. Some England supporters sang a chant referencing Germany's casualties in World War II, which the authorities have urged them not to sing. But for most, the mood was one of anticipation.
Come on, England! 2-0. Kane's going to get them both. Foden's going to be outstanding, and Bellingham, absolute quality. Best player in the world.
Even if it's just 1-0, everyone's been moaning that, you know, we're not playing the most amazing and exciting football. Just need the 3 points.
If we don't win it this year, we're going to be waiting a while. Do you know what I mean? So I think this is our year. It's coming home, boys. Let's go.
Despite Jude Bellingham's brilliance, England only just edged past Serbia in their opening match. They've been fine-tuning their preparations at their base in Blankenheim, hoping those first night nerves are now gone.
We know that we can play better than we did the other day. Emotionally, there's so much tension. I don't think people can really understand what it is like for young players. So pleased to have got the result from that, and we know we have to be better now.
Well, England know a win here in Frankfurt tomorrow will guarantee their place in the knockout stages. But in Denmark, they're up against a team with a point to prove.
Time for a look at the weather now. Louise Lear is here. I think lots of people are going to be celebrating what you're about to tell us as well. Sunshine.
I know, finally. Everybody's been moaning at me for the last few weeks, so I'm going to milk this. Bear with. But yes, today was a lovely day. In fact, all 4 nations today had temperatures over 20 degrees. And you may well have heard a rumour that it is set to get warmer as we move through next week. Yes, it will get warmer still. In fact, we could see temperatures widely into the mid-20s, maybe high 20s in the southeast of England at some point next week. And we haven't seen that for quite some time, have we? But back to reality, into tomorrow, we are likely to see a little more in the way of cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland, thick enough for some showery outbreaks of rain. And this nuisance cloud here could be a real nuisance across southwest England, Wales and into parts of Yorkshire. May well be thick enough for a spot or 2 of rain. Nothing more than that. Some lovely lengthy spells of sunshine though either side, and even the rain in Scotland will be very hit and miss, brightening up to the far north later on today. But the temperatures here not quite as high, 15 to 18 degrees in Scotland. Highest values tomorrow in the southeast of around 22 degrees. Summer solstice tomorrow, parts of England seeing 18 hours of sunshine, nearly 20 hours of sunshine in Scotland. But you will probably not see the benefit of that if you're a hay fever sufferer, because the pollen is going to be very high indeed. So please bear that in mind. Now, as we move out of Thursday into Friday, another weather front will bring some rain into the west. It's not going to amount to too much once again. Showery outbreaks of rain drifting into Northern Ireland, into the northwest of Scotland. Ahead of it, we'll see some sunny spells across eastern Scotland, central and eastern England. That's where the best of the warmth is likely to be once again. So we could see temperatures peaking at highs of, say, 20 to 23 Celsius now. As we go into the weekend, that weather front will continue potentially to bring a little bit of cloud and drizzle on Saturday, but the high pressure is building in from Sunday onwards. The wind direction swings round to a light southwesterly. That's going to be feeding that warmth in, and as you can see, temperatures are likely to peak through the middle part of next week. There's going to be a lot of sunshine to go with it as well. Sophie.
Louise, thank you. And that is it from us for this evening. Right now on BBC One, it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Good night.